Welcome again to what we have entitled Hebrew Bible Old Testament Interpretation. Interpretation, the word in the Greek hermeneutics, comes from the Greek understanding of the god Hermes. The god Hermes being a messenger of the gods. Hermes would have the responsibility of getting into the presence of the gods, hearing the summoning of the gods, get the message from the god, then to journey back. Once journeying back, then to interpret the text and then proclaim or transmit the text, but to be able to transmit it and to proclaim it in a way that the audience or human hearers might be able to understand it and receive it. And as preachers and ministers and teachers, and even what we would call these evangelists, those of us who have been called to be priests in this faith, our job is to help those who have not come to know this God, to understand the message and what does it mean to be in relationship with God. One of the foundational premises is to understand Old Testament, which really there's no word for the Old Testament. It really is Old Covenant. And what we call Hebrew Bible, the Jews' biblical record of their encounter with this specific God, this God El, this God Elohim, Adonai, this God Yahweh. And so, as we begin to start looking at this, we begin to start even looking at the stories and the narratives and the cycles of what the writer is intending, and how we can begin to say the writer intended, now this means this for us. One of the first things that I want to look at, invite you to look at, is the theological inferences, the theological understanding being suggested and argued by the writer. Theology, theos, the study of the character and the nature of this God. But when you read Hebrew Bible, one of the things that you have to look at is that they have names for this God. It begins as El, which is Canaanite. It moves or can move to Elohim, which can be plural in some aspects. Then you hear Adonai. Then you hear Adonai Yahweh or Yahweh. Or you hear this El and Adonai. So there are combinations so what then is their understanding of the imagery, the character, and the nature of this God? One of the ways of doing this is to look at etymology, root word meaning, and to go back in and to grasp what is the meaning, or what are the images, what are the characteristics that have been ascribed to these specific gods at certain times. We also have to look, when we start talking about theology, we start looking at the different gods in a comparative study methodology. We look and we say, how does this God, El, or Yahweh, or Adonai, how do they compare to these other gods? And how do those images shift and sometimes interconnect and are interwoven in the understanding? Remember, Israel was a very nomadic people. And so one of the things that we have to look at is that there were stories and accounts that predated their understanding, such as the Code of Hammurabi, or you start talking about the Amarna tablets. There are these different encounters, there are these different stories and narratives, the Epic of Gilgamesh. And so how did this nomadic people interpret and reinterpret some of these stories as they journeyed throughout these different lands and regions with these other gods, as well as they moved through Egypt? And they came to this understanding as they talk about Maat, the goddess that was about truth and justice and harmony and order. And Israel begins to understand that this God that they serve is a God of order, that this God has ordered the universe, that there is an interconnectedness between the God, creation, and humanity, and that this interconnectedness must be maintained. Or the stories that constantly talked about the gods creating the world, but getting tired of doing the work, and therefore creating human beings to continue to maintain the creation. And then when you read Genesis, and you read the second chapter of Genesis, you read that the Adam is placed in the garden to till and keep, to nurture, to make sure it is maintained and in order. So how do you begin to understand these correlations of these stories and what the Hebrew people are trying to argue about the purpose and the function, the role of human beings? Because in their understanding theologically, everything is created with a purpose, a function, and has an order to it or has a reason behind it. So as you begin to understand their writings, you begin to understand not only Israel as supposedly this faithful or sinful nation, but you understand how do they fit or not fit their purpose and their role. And what does it mean now to talk about sin? Sin, in that interpretation, has a multiplicity of words that would be defined as sin, whether it is through rebellion or whether it is intentional. While many of us automatically run to the New Testament, Hebrew Bible carries us into these different perceptions that Paul Tillich and Howard Thurman says really reflect an estrangement from God. So when you talk about this sin, it is being estranged from God, from oneself, and when one's ground of being or purpose. So theologically, we start looking and reading the story to say, well, wait a minute. How are these people living out their purpose? How are they being connected to God and God's leading them toward fulfilling this purpose? And how are they not? And does that speak to us as we talk about our purpose when society and culture, politically and socially, continues to lead us into being everything but our true selves? It gives us a different value system where that who I have been created to be is no longer relevant and can no longer sustain me in an economic and political and social culture that is moving toward empire building. So, as we start looking at this, what then is the message? How do we interpret this message and help other individuals to be in this time and in this world context? When I use those words, content, context, genre, Zitz and Laban, the setting in life, the setting of the text, the content, what is it being said, the context, where is it coming from? We start putting together these kinds of methods to interpret, well, this is the situation. This is what they're responding to. This is what they're saying as they look at their world events and their lives at that time. Most of us right now are really frustrated because a lot of times we go to churches and the message is irrelevant to our world context, to our communal setting. It is not relevant as we live in a commercial, capitalistic, individualized, hedonistic society and culture. When the text is written, most times it has to do with a communal setting. It has to do with kinship and family. Whereas most of us now, it is based upon my desires, what I want, how much money I got, status, and just getting mine. So there is, again, this dichotomy. There is this antithetical way of trying to bridge. Our job is to bridge, is to make some meanings and some understandings to shape or help individuals shape their decision making and to shape their understanding of their life, their situations and their circumstances, and to formulate and construct decisions that can help them not only get through, but to get through with purpose and joy and meaning. So when we talk about comparative methodology, we compare a lot of these stories. We compare a lot of the understandings with the stories in the Near Eastern culture. And then we start talking about, well, underneath it, what was the argument? What we call persuasive, or the rhetoric, persuasive argument. What is it that the writer is arguing? What is the writer trying to tell us? A lot of times when we even talk about marriage and relationships, we automatically go to our Western understanding. And we then began to talk about God ordaining all of this and bringing it together, without really looking at what Douglas Knight says, is that marriages really are based upon, if you talk about villages, you're talking about property rights. You're talking about women being seen as property. You're talking about continuing to bring children into the world, because we have to build a nation. And the way of building a nation is to produce these children. And these children being produced so that they can help us to cultivate the land, because everything is around the land. So we really need male children. And when we start talking about female children, now we're starting to talk about the need for a bride price and a dowry. So we're still talking about property, resources, economic empowerment as we start talking about marriage, and that the contract is more about property rights and talking about more about the resources and receiving when we talk about the village. But if we start talking about the city is about families coming together. So marriages are to enhance political, social, and economic status. So as we start looking at these things, we begin to start helping people say, well, wait a minute, a lot of our marriages are still the same. Is this what God intended? Or as Jesus said from the beginning, it was not so. So how do we carry individuals back when they really are basing it upon economic viability and the building of a nation? We need to reinterpret that. I'm looking forward to sharing the methodologies with you.